Camilla had always believed in love. She had trusted her husband, Daniel, with everything: her heart, her future, and most of all, her family's wealth. They had been married for 5 years, and she had always seen him as her partner, her equal, her confidant. But that all changed one fateful day when Camilla's father passed away, leaving her an inheritance that was supposed to secure her future, her family's legacy. It was meant to be a gift, something to help them grow old together, to build the life they had always dreamed of. But Daniel had other plans. It started small, subtle at first. At the funeral, Daniel had been unusually quiet, his eyes darting around, not grieving, but calculating. Camilla didn't think much of it at first. Grief affected people differently. But then the discussions began. Daniel, always so charming and persuasive, convinced Camilla that they should invest the inheritance in a business venture. "It'll secure our future," he said. "We'll double the money. Think of the life we could have, Camilla." And so she agreed. She trusted him. They made plans, and the checks were signed. But as time passed, the investments seemed to be failing. At first, it was a few losses here and there, but soon it became clear that the business was nothing more than a facade. Her money, her father's legacy, was disappearing. Daniel didn't want to talk about it, always shifting the blame or making excuses. Camilla, still believing in him, let it slide. Then came the day when everything changed. She had returned home from work early, hoping to surprise Daniel with a quiet evening together. But what she found was anything but peaceful. There, on the kitchen counter, was a stack of documents. The final pieces of the inheritance had been transferred out of her name and into Daniel's. Her heart sank. She picked up the papers, her hands trembling. The signatures were hers, but she had no recollection of signing them. It was clear. Daniel had used his charm and manipulation to take control of everything, and now the inheritance that was meant for her future was his. It wasn't just the money. It was everything she had worked for, everything her father had worked for, now in the hands of a man who had betrayed her trust. Camilla's mind raced as the realization hit her. Daniel had taken everything. He had used her love, her trust, and turned it into a weapon. The man she had shared her life with was now her enemy. For the first time in years, she felt the coldness of betrayal creep into her chest. It wasn't just the money. It was the way he had manipulated her, the way he had lied and stolen from her while she had been none the wiser. She wasn't just heartbroken. She was furious. "I gave you everything," Camilla whispered to herself, the words breaking through her mind like a wave. "I trusted you with my heart, my family's legacy, and you took it all." Her eyes burned with a newfound rage, one that was unfamiliar but powerful. This was more than just a betrayal. It was a war, and Camilla wasn't going to lose. No one took from her and got away with it. Not now, not ever. She would make him pay. That night, as she lay in bed, a plan began to form in her mind. She wasn't going to let Daniel get away with this. If he thought he could take her inheritance and live happily ever after, he was sorely mistaken. The ultimate payback was coming, and Camilla was going to make sure that Daniel paid for every lie, every deception, and every moment he thought he could steal from her. She wasn't just going to get her money back. She was going to take everything from him. And this time, it would be his turn to feel the sting of betrayal. Sometimes, trust can be the most dangerous thing we give away. People can deceive, manipulate, and steal from us when we least expect it. But once we recognize the betrayal, we have the power to take control, reclaim our lives, and make sure that no one ever takes advantage of us again. You can't change the past, but you can always fight for your future. The days following the discovery of Daniel's betrayal were the hardest Camila had ever faced. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, that smile of his, the smile that had once made her feel safe, now twisted and full of lies. But what hurt most was that she had let herself believe in him, let him manipulate her without question. The anger inside her burned hotter with every passing hour. But as much as the betrayal stung, it had awakened something in Camila, something that had been buried beneath her desire to please, to keep the peace, and to trust. Her entire life, she had been giving and giving, often to her own detriment. But now she felt an overwhelming need to take control, to fight back, and to reclaim what was rightfully hers. The first step, Camila knew, was to confront Daniel. She needed answers, but more importantly, she needed him to see that he couldn't take from her without facing consequences. But there was more at stake here than just money. It was about her pride, her dignity, and her future. She wasn't going to let him think he could just take everything from her and walk away scot-free. That afternoon, Camila called Daniel, her voice calm but edged with an authority she had never used before. "We need to talk," she said, and the coldness in her tone was enough to send a chill down Daniel's spine. Daniel arrived home late that evening, looking flustered but trying to maintain his composure. His usual charm was gone, replaced with an air of guilt that was impossible to ignore. As soon as he walked in, Camila knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. "Camila, Daniel started, but she cut him off before he could speak further. "Don't. I know what you did," Camila said, her voice firm. "I saw the documents, Daniel. I saw the transfer of everything that was mine into your name. You've lied to me, used me, and stolen what was rightfully mine. And now you expect me to just forgive you and move on?" Daniel's face faltered, the mask of confidence slipping. "Camila, it's not what you think," he began. But Camila was having none of it. She was done listening to excuses, done with his manipulations. "You used me, Daniel," Camila said, her voice cracking with anger. "You took my inheritance, the inheritance that was meant to secure my future, my family's legacy. And now you're sitting here, trying to tell me it was for our future. How dare you?" Daniel's face flushed, and for a moment, Camila could see the cracks in his facade. He looked guilty, like a man who had been caught in a lie he couldn't talk his way out of. But Camila wasn't finished. "You've crossed a line. You thought you could take everything from me and get away with it. But you're wrong," Camila continued, her eyes cold and steady. "I'm going to make sure you regret ever thinking you could get away with this." Daniel's expression shifted, his defensive posture crumbling. "Camila, please." He reached for her hand, but she yanked it away. "No," she snapped. "You don't get to play the victim here. You don't get to come back and say you're sorry. This isn't about forgiveness anymore. This is about me taking back what you've stolen from me and making sure you never forget what happens when you betray the wrong person." Camila stood tall, her heart racing but her resolve stronger than ever. "You took my inheritance, but you didn't just take my money. You took my trust. You took my belief in us. And now I'm going to take something from you." Daniel looked confused, and a flash of fear crossed his face. He hadn't expected this, hadn't anticipated Camilla's strength. She had always been the quiet one, the one who tried to keep the peace. But now she wasn't just standing up for her money, she was standing up for herself, and that terrified him. "What are you going to do, Camilla?" Daniel asked, his voice weak. "You'll see," she said, her voice cold, almost serene. "The ultimate payback doesn't come from taking everything back. It comes from showing you that you can't take what's not yours. And believe me, Daniel, I'll make sure you never forget what happens when you betray me." The words hung in the air between them like a promise, a warning. Camilla wasn't sure what her next move would be, but she knew one thing for certain. She was going to make Daniel pay for every single lie, every bit of manipulation. The tables were turning, and now it was his turn to feel the sting of betrayal. That night, Camilla laid in bed, her mind swirling with the possibilities. She would get her inheritance back, but more importantly, she would take back her life. She wasn't going to let Daniel have the power anymore. The ultimate payback was just beginning, and Camilla was ready to make him regret everything. Camilla had spent too long living in someone else's shadow, too long trusting the wrong people. But no more. It was time for her to take back control and show Daniel that when you betray someone who trusts you, there are always consequences. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is take back what was stolen from you, whether it's your trust, your money, or your sense of self. But once you decide to stand up for yourself and set boundaries, you open the door to reclaiming your life. When people betray you, it's not just about revenge. It's about taking back your power and never letting anyone walk all over you again. The days following her confrontation with Daniel were the longest of Camilla's life. She hadn't heard from him since their heated exchange, and while she knew he was avoiding her, she wasn't going to let that stop her. The cold, calculating plan she had set in motion was already taking form. Her inheritance, her father's hard-earned legacy, wasn't just a financial asset to her. It was a symbol of everything she had worked for, everything her family had worked for. She wasn't going to let Daniel's manipulation be the end of that. Camilla didn't tell anyone what had happened yet. Not her friends, not her family. It was personal. She didn't need their sympathy or their advice. This was her fight, and she wasn't about to let anyone interfere. She had to get her inheritance back, but this time, she wasn't going to go about it the same way. She was done being the one who always trusted and forgave. The payback she had planned would be far worse than Daniel could ever imagine. It wasn't until a few days later that she heard from him. The text came in the late afternoon, and when she saw it, her stomach churned. Daniel's words were as smooth and manipulative as ever. "Camilla, I know I've messed up. I want to make this right. Let's talk." The message was short, but it reeked of desperation. Camilla knew he wasn't reaching out because he wanted to fix things. He was reaching out because he wanted to avoid the fallout of his betrayal. She wasn't going to make it that easy for him. With a smirk, Camilla set the phone down, her mind already racing through the next steps. The more she thought about it, the more determined she became. She couldn't let him worm his way back into her life with just a few words. He had crossed a line, and now it was her turn to draw the boundaries. Camilla responded after a few hours, keeping her reply brief. "I'm not interested in talking, Daniel. What you did is unforgivable." She knew this would hit him hard, especially after years of getting his way. The game was changing now, and Camilla was in control. But what she hadn't expected was how quickly he would escalate. Within an hour, the phone rang. Camilla didn't answer. She didn't need to. She knew Daniel was already planning his next move. But it was time for Camila to take action. No more waiting. No more hesitating. She decided to take a trip to the bank. Her father's estate had been managed by a financial advisor who had worked with her family for years. She trusted him, and she knew that if anyone could help her navigate the legalities of regaining control of her inheritance, it was him. When she walked into his office, the usual calm atmosphere felt different. The tension in her shoulders was impossible to ignore as she approached the desk. "I need your help," she said without preamble. "Daniel took my inheritance, and I want it back." The financial advisor, a man named Robert, looked up at her with a steady gaze. "Camila, I know how much that inheritance means to you, but this situation is going to be complicated. If Daniel has forged signatures or manipulated documents, you're going to need solid proof to reverse everything." Camila sat down, her mind already working through the details. "I have a way of getting that proof," she said, her voice calm but determined. "I just need you to make sure everything is legal. I'll handle the rest." Robert raised an eyebrow but nodded. "I'll assist with the paperwork. But Camila, you need to be careful. Once this becomes official, there will be no going back. This could destroy any chance of reconciling with Daniel." Camila looked him in the eye, her decision unwavering. "I'm not worried about that. It's time I stop being the one who forgives. This is about my future now, and I'm going to make sure Daniel pays for everything." Later that evening, as Camila sat alone in her apartment, the documents were being prepared, and her plan was slowly taking shape. She wasn't just going to recover her inheritance. She was going to expose Daniel for who he truly was. She had worked too hard to let him take it all. The business ventures he had claimed to invest in, the money that had disappeared. Camila was going to dig into every detail. She was going to find the cracks in his story, and when she did, she would strike. As she closed her eyes, Camila felt a rush of empowerment flood through her. She wasn't the victim anymore. This was no longer about her being manipulated. This was her taking control of her own life and making sure that Daniel would never, ever think he could take from her again. The ultimate payback wasn't about making him suffer. It was about proving to herself that she could survive, thrive, and protect what was hers. And when the moment came, when everything was exposed, Daniel would finally understand the cost of betrayal. Taking back what was stolen from you requires strength, strategy, and courage. You don't have to be a victim of manipulation or betrayal forever. When you take control of your life, you reclaim your power and the future you deserve. You can't change the past, but you have the power to shape the future. Never let anyone dictate your worth or take what is yours. Take back your life. The days after Camila's meeting with Robert were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings. Every moment of her life felt consumed with the idea of taking back what Daniel had stolen from her. But for the first time in a long while, she felt alive, empowered. She wasn't going to let him win. No longer would she be the one left in the shadows, quietly picking up the pieces of someone else's mess. This time, it was her turn to set the rules. She had gathered all the necessary documents and legal papers, and now all that was left was to make sure Daniel wouldn't see it coming. Camila had become a master of deception, moving like a shadow in the night, while Daniel continued to believe he was untouchable. The documents were ready. The proof of his manipulation was mounting, and all she needed was the final push to send him crashing down. It was a Saturday afternoon when she finally decided it was time. She had spent the morning finalizing the papers with Robert, ensuring everything was airtight. Her next step was to visit Daniel's office. He had been distracted with business meetings all week, and Camila knew this was the perfect moment to strike. Daniel's office was located in one of the tallest buildings downtown, and as she entered the sleek, glass-fronted lobby, Camila felt a strange sense of satisfaction. This was where Daniel thrived, his world of power, wealth, and manipulation. But today, it was going to be her world. She wasn't going to let him walk out of there like he always did, acting like he controlled everything. Camila stepped off the elevator and walked confidently down the long corridor to his office. She had practiced this moment in her mind for days, imagining what it would feel like to face him, to confront him, to take back what was hers. The door to his office was slightly ajar, and she could hear his voice inside, talking on the phone with someone. Camila didn't knock. She didn't need to. She pushed the door open and stepped inside, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Daniel looked up, surprised to see her standing there, but quickly masked his shock with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Camila," he said, his voice smooth. "I didn't expect to see you today. What's this about?" Camilla's heart raced, but her voice remained steady. "I think it's time we talk about your little plan, Daniel." His face faltered for a moment, the charm slipping, but he quickly recovered. "I told you before, I'm sorry for what happened. Let's move past this. We can fix everything." Camila stepped closer to the desk, her eyes narrowing. "You don't get to apologize, Daniel. You don't get to manipulate your way out of this one." She placed the stack of documents on the desk, the papers making a sharp, resounding noise as they hit the surface. Daniel's eyes darted to them, and his jaw clenched. "What is this?" he asked, his voice suddenly cold. "Proof," Camila said, her tone hardening. "Proof that you took my inheritance, that you forged my signature, and that you've been lying to me this whole time." Daniel stood up, pushing his chair back with a loud scrape. "This isn't what you think, Camila," he said, his voice rising in panic. "You don't know the whole story." "Oh, I know enough," Camila replied, crossing her arms. "I know you've been using my trust, my money, to prop up your own schemes. I know you thought you could take everything from me and walk away unscathed, but I'm not the same person I used to be." Daniel's expression hardened, and for a split second, Camila saw something else. Fear. He wasn't used to being threatened. He wasn't used to people standing up to him, especially not someone like her. Camila had always been the quiet one, the one who kept her head down and played along, but not anymore. "You think you've won?" Daniel sneered. "You think these papers will make a difference? I have connections, Camila. You can't just take everything back. I'll destroy you." Camila smiled, the anger from earlier now replaced with calm certainty. "You've already destroyed yourself, Daniel. The truth is out. You won't be able to hide behind your lies anymore. The legal documents are already in motion. Your little empire is crumbling, and you're going to watch it all fall apart." Daniel's face twisted with rage, but there was nothing he could do now. The pieces were already in place. The payback had begun. Camila turned to leave, but just before she reached the door, she stopped and glanced back at him. "And Daniel," she said, her voice colder than before, "don't think for a second that you're getting away with this. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you really are." With that, she left his office, the weight of the victory settling in her chest. It wasn't over yet, But the battle was far from lost. She had taken back her inheritance, her dignity, and most importantly, her power. Now, Daniel would learn that when you betray someone, you lose more than just trust. You lose everything. When trust is broken, there is no quick fix. It takes time, strength, and courage to reclaim what's been stolen from you. But when you choose to stand up for yourself, to take control of your life, you can turn the tables on those who thought they could hurt you. You don't have to be a victim of someone else's schemes. Reclaim your power, fight for what's rightfully yours, and never let anyone walk all over you again. The week after Camilla's confrontation with Daniel felt like an emotional whirlwind. Her heart was heavy with the finality of everything that had transpired. She had set the wheels in motion to take back her inheritance, and though it was still a waiting game with the legal paperwork, Camila could already feel the shift in power. The victory was hers, but there was still so much left to deal with. Daniel, she knew, wasn't going to take his defeat lying down, but for now she had the upper hand, and that was enough to keep her going. It wasn't until the following Thursday that things really began to escalate. Camila was sitting at her kitchen table, sipping her coffee, when her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but something about it made her pause. She hesitated before answering. "Camila," a voice said on the other end, a voice that made her stomach drop. It was Daniel. "Daniel," Camila said, her voice steady. "What do you want?" "Camila, listen to me." Daniel's voice was desperate, and Camila could hear the tension in it. "I know you're angry, but we can fix this. We can make this right, together." She could almost feel the anger radiating through the phone. This wasn't the calm, collected Daniel she had once known. This was a man backed into a corner, trying to save whatever he could before it all fell apart. "No, Daniel," Camila said, her voice unwavering. "It's too late for that. You've crossed a line. You betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now you have to face the consequences." "Camila, please," Daniel pleaded. "We don't have to go through with this. I can fix it. Just give me a chance. You don't know what you're doing. I'm not the enemy here." Camila let out a bitter laugh. "You took everything from me, Daniel. You think I'm going to believe you now? You used me. You took advantage of me. You don't get to play the victim anymore." For a long moment, there was nothing but silence on the other end. Camila knew what was coming next, and sure enough, Daniel's voice returned, this time darker, more threatening. "You don't understand, Camila. You're playing a dangerous game. You've made a powerful enemy. You've made me your enemy." Camila's heart pounded in her chest, but her resolve didn't waver. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Daniel. You think you can intimidate me? You've already lost. The legal papers are already in motion. You won't get away with this, and you won't scare me." She hung up the phone, her hands shaking, but her heart filled with a fierce sense of strength. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. Daniel wasn't done yet, but neither was she. Over the next few days, Camila became even more focused, poring over every detail of her legal case, ensuring that nothing would be left to chance. She knew Daniel wouldn't give up so easily. He had been using his charm and influence to control people his entire life, but this time he had underestimated her. She wasn't going to let him win. Then came the final blow. On Friday afternoon, she received a call from Robert, the financial advisor. He had some shocking news. Daniel had tried to make a move to reverse the transactions, to regain control of the inheritance. He had attempted to manipulate the situation, even going so far as to offer bribes to some of the legal personnel involved. "Camila, I need you to be aware," Robert warned her. "Daniel is pulling out all the stops now. He's trying to manipulate the situation from the inside. You need to be careful." The blood in her veins turned to ice. Daniel was desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. He was going to fight dirty, but Camila had anticipated this. She had prepared for it. "I know," Camila said, her voice colder than it had ever been. "He doesn't scare me. I'll fight back, Robert. This ends with me winning. He can't take everything from me again." "Just be careful," Robert added. "You've already put yourself at risk. Daniel's not going to let this go without a fight." Camilla's mind raced as she thought about everything she had sacrificed to get to this point. The fight was far from over, but she wasn't backing down. She had lost too much already. The only way out of this was to make sure Daniel faced the consequences of his actions. That night, as she sat in front of her laptop, her mind working through the details of her next move, she realized just how much she had changed. A year ago, she would have been scared of confrontation, too afraid to stand up for herself. But now, she was no longer the woman who let people walk all over her. She was stronger, more determined, and this was her battle. When the final papers were filed, when everything was in place, Camila would ensure that Daniel's lies, his manipulation, and his betrayal were exposed for the world to see. This was about more than money. It was about justice. It was about taking back what was hers, showing Daniel that he couldn't get away with everything. The war wasn't over, but Camila had won the first round. She wasn't going to let him take another thing from her. This time, she was in control. When someone betrays you, the consequences don't always come right away. But in the end, the truth always catches up to them. You have the strength to fight back, even when it feels impossible. It's not just about revenge. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, and your life. Keep pushing forward, and never let anyone take what's yours. Camilla's life had been consumed by the battle with Daniel for weeks now. Every day felt like a strategic move in the war that had been forced upon her. She spent countless hours reviewing legal documents, meeting with Robert, and planning her next steps. Her life had been reduced to a constant battle for control, and while it was draining, there was a part of her that felt alive in ways she hadn't in years. The woman she had become was no longer the passive, trusting Camila who had let Daniel take advantage of her. She was fierce now, and the final reckoning with Daniel was closing in. But there was one final piece to the puzzle. She needed something to push Daniel over the edge, something to guarantee that his manipulation would be exposed for all to see. She had her documents, she had her evidence, but she needed leverage, and she knew exactly where to find it. A few days after her meeting with Robert, Camila made the decision to visit a place she had tried to avoid for years, Daniel's office. It was his last stronghold, the place where his wealth and influence had been built. It was time to bring the walls crashing down. She had a plan, and it wasn't one that involved confrontation. She wasn't going to walk in and fight with him. She had already done that. This time, she was going to take everything he had worked so hard to hide and make sure he never had control again. Camila arrived at the sleek office building, her heart racing but her mind sharp. She knew what she had to do. With a determined breath, she walked into the lobby and up to the receptionist. "I need to speak with Daniel," Camila said, her tone direct. The receptionist, A young woman with a polite smile looked at her with a bit of uncertainty. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "No," Camilla replied coolly, "but I'm sure Daniel will want to see me." The receptionist hesitated, glancing at her screen. "I'll let him know you're here," she said, already typing something into her computer. Camilla knew that her presence here would raise some eyebrows. Daniel had worked hard to keep his life protected, and if anyone was going to unearth his dirty secrets, it would be her. Within moments, she was escorted to Daniel's office, a space that had always made her feel small. This was his domain, where he had always been the master, pulling strings, manipulating situations, making people dance to his tune. But now it was hers for the taking. As she entered, Daniel stood from behind his desk, looking genuinely surprised to see her. His face was tight with apprehension. "Camilla, what are you doing here?" he asked, trying to hide the panic creeping into his voice. Camilla didn't answer right away. She walked past him, taking in the office, the expensive furnishings, the bookshelves filled with his success stories, the carefully curated artwork. This was Daniel's kingdom, and she was about to tear it down. "I think you know why I'm here," Camilla said finally, her voice cold. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I have a copy of everything, all the transactions, all the forged documents, and the evidence of your lies." "But there's more," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I have a few things I found in your office. Things you'd never want anyone to see." Daniel's face went pale. He moved to step closer to her, but Camilla raised a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Don't even try to intimidate me, Daniel. It's too late for that. The game's over." She held up the folder in front of him, his secrets sealed inside. "You've manipulated people for years, used your charm to get ahead. But now, your empire is about to crumble. Every shady deal you made, every lie you told to get your hands on what didn't belong to you. It's all here, and it's going public." He tried to keep his composure, but Camilla could see the sweat beading on his forehead, the fear he was trying to suppress. He had lost control, and she could see it in the way his hands trembled. "You won't get away with this," Daniel spat, his voice venomous. "You think people will believe you over me? I've built this company. I've worked hard. I can destroy you just as easily." Camilla met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. "Not this time. You've already destroyed yourself, Daniel. You just didn't realize it. You thought you could walk over me, take what was mine, but now it's your turn to pay for it." For a moment, there was only silence. Then Daniel dropped his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He knew it was over. "Take what you need, Camilla," he said in a low voice, "but you're making a mistake. You won't find peace with this." Camilla didn't reply. She didn't need to. The truth was, this wasn't about peace anymore. It was about making sure Daniel understood the consequences of his betrayal. It was about showing him that no one could manipulate her anymore. As she walked out of his office, Camilla felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. She had done it. She had taken back what was rightfully hers, and now Daniel was the one who was exposed. This was her victory. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is take control of your own story. But once you decide to stop being a victim of manipulation, you find your strength. When you stand up for yourself, the world opens up to you. You don't have to let someone's betrayal define you. Take control. Expose the truth. And remember, you have the power to write your own future. The fallout from Camilla's confrontation with Daniel was swift and intense. Over the course of the next few days, her life changed in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. The legal documents she had carefully orchestrated with Robert, the evidence of Daniel's manipulation, and the public exposure of his lies began to cause ripples through the business world and beyond. It wasn't just the inheritance that Daniel had stolen. It was his reputation, his power, and everything he had built on deceit, all crumbling under the weight of the truth. Camilla sat at her kitchen table the morning after the final pieces of the story broke, watching the headlines flash across her phone. Scandal in the business world. CEO accused of fraud and manipulation, the article read. Daniel's company was under investigation, his personal finances were being scrutinized, and the truth was coming out, piece by piece. It felt surreal to Camilla, to see everything she had fought for laid bare for the world to see. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, it was from Robert. Camilla, the documents you provided are already making waves. Daniel's company is in turmoil. The investors are pulling out and the press is all over him. This is going to be a long road, but you've won. The payback is already happening. Camilla read the message, feeling a small sense of vindication, but knowing that this wasn't the end. It had never been about just destroying Daniel. It had been about showing him that no one could take advantage of her again. But she knew the emotional battle wasn't over. As much as Daniel's life was unraveling, her own was still in flux. The money, the inheritance, it was all hers now. But what did that really mean? She wasn't going to let her newfound wealth or victory cloud the bigger picture. This wasn't just about payback. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her power, and her future. That evening, as the world continued to turn and Daniel's empire continued to fall, Camilla decided to take some time to herself. She had fought so hard for so long that she had almost forgotten who she was outside of this battle. She needed a moment of peace to reflect on the journey and to remember why she had started this fight in the first place. She took a long walk in the park, allowing the cool breeze to calm her thoughts. She needed to reset, to remember that she had a life beyond the chaos. In the past, she had spent so many years trying to make everyone else happy, her family, her friends, and Daniel, that she had lost sight of who she was. But now she felt a quiet strength that was undeniable. She had taken back what was hers, not just financially, but emotionally. She had taken back control of her life. It wasn't long before she found herself sitting on a bench, staring out at the sunset, reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal had hurt more than she could have imagined, but the payback was sweeter than she ever thought possible. And that's when the reality hit her. She didn't need to destroy Daniel. The destruction of his life, his reputation, his business, it wasn't her doing. It was the consequence of his own actions. He had made choices. He had stolen from her. And the universe had a way of ensuring that those who wrong others would face the consequences of their choices. Camilla didn't need to carry that weight. The weight of his downfall wasn't hers to bear. It was the natural result of his greed and deceit. What mattered now was that she had learned to trust herself again, to stand up for what was right, and to never let anyone take what was hers again. As she sat there, lost in her thoughts, her phone rang once more. This time it was her mother. She hadn't spoken to her in weeks. The last time they had spoken, things had been strained. The truth of the inheritance had come out in the family, and there had been tension, accusations, and disagreements. But now, everything had changed. Camilla, I I just saw the news. Her mother's voice trembled. Is everything okay? You've been through so much. I don't even know what to say. Camilla smiled softly, her heart swelling with emotion. I'm okay, Mom. I've taken back what's mine. I've fought for it, and I've won. It's been a difficult journey, but I'm stronger for it. I've learned a lot about myself, and I think I'm finally ready to move on. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then her mother's voice softened, full of emotion. I'm proud of you, Camilla. You've shown strength I didn't know you had. I think I've been too focused on what I wanted for you. I never really saw you as the woman you are now. But I see it now, and I'm sorry for not supporting you sooner. Camilla felt a rush of gratitude and relief. This was the reconciliation she hadn't known she needed. She had spent so many years trying to please others, trying to meet their expectations. And now, for the first time, she felt like she was truly seen for who she was, not for what anyone else wanted her to be. It's okay, Mom, Camilla replied. I think we both needed to learn some lessons, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Camilla felt a sense of peace wash over her. The battle had been hard, but the victory wasn't in the destruction. It was in the self-discovery. The payback wasn't just about getting revenge. It was about reclaiming her life, her power, and her future. The lesson here is that sometimes the hardest battles we fight are the ones within ourselves. It's easy to fall into the trap of revenge and seek out the destruction of those who hurt us, but the true victory lies in reclaiming our power, standing up for ourselves, and refusing to let anyone take away what is ours. Betrayal, while painful, can serve as the catalyst for our growth. The real payback is in choosing to rise above, to never allow ourselves to be manipulated or controlled again, and to find peace within ourselves. If you found Camilla's journey empowering, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to never miss another story of strength, resilience, and the ultimate payback. You won't want to miss what happens next.